So there was a time when, AWS and Azure and everything was just for test dev. That time has passed, and now we have a lot of production apps in the cloud. So the question is, what are people doing now? Are they just, using regular old source dedupe and pretending these are physical servers? What are they doing? And what should they be doing? And in the last week, I've been briefed by 3 vendors, I think, one of which we just left this morning, that are developing apps to back up cloud servers. So the question is, what do we think is going to happen there?
Cloud servers or cloud solutions, right? Because when you're an enterprise, a lot of times you think about, if they were to go out of business, what's my mitigation? And a lot of times you see enterprises make the decision, anything I'm sending externally, I'm keeping a copy, right? I'm keeping it no matter what, whether that's a backup or whether that's the...
Yeah, I'm talking about a company who's running its production apps in AWS.
Yeah, I think
it has a data center.
I think this still holds true, right? A lot of those companies still want an offsite copy of that data.
So the question is how?
It's very difficult. So if you are really into the AWS services, I'm not talking about instances, no? It's quite easy. I can say easy, but there are already solutions that help you to back up that instances. But then you start using S3 and
Elastic database.
Yeah, DynamoDB and blah, 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 and then all the others. And that stuff. So I don't know how you can back up all of it. Also because probably you have a point solution for each one of the services.
Yeah, well, it comes back to a big part of what's happening in the transition to what we're calling cloud native is resiliency is shifting from being the responsibility of the infrastructure to being the responsibility of the application. And when we talk about backing up the cloud, there's 2 horror stories I want to make sure we get in.
Cloud Spaces.
The first is Code Spaces.
Code Spaces.
Where they backed up their AWS instances using the AWS backup facility, but the S3 bucket they were backing it up to was the same AWS account as the compute instances, and somebody, whether they hacked them or was a disgruntled employee, got that password, deleted the production, and deleted the backup. Yep. So at very least, if you're going to be backing up a service, you back it up to some other service that has a different password. And no one person should know both of them.
And that just ties into how we're changing, right? We're taking what has been historically an infrastructure problem of HA or resiliency, and we're fundamentally shifting that responsibility, slowly, albeit, from the infrastructure guys down to the application guys. Well, and infrastructure has to adapt accordingly. And
it's not a free decision, though, which is what's
I hate to be the curmudgeon, but it's just like when we brought PCs into the enterprise in the 80s. And now the user is running Lotus 123 on his PC-AT on his desktop, and the user's responsible for backing that up because it came in on a PO that said word processor, and IT doesn't even know it's there.
We have business groups that are running mission-critical applications on an Access database in the server that runs under their desk.
Right. Yeah. And this, and going to AWS is exactly the same guerrilla IT.
Yeah, but these are not technology problems. These are people problems.
Yeah. The other case I wanted to make sure we talked about is that the corporate infrastructure guy's definition of backup is protecting my data against any and all threats, including the users. And a solution provider's definition of backup is protecting the user's data against anything we could do wrong. So if your senior executive vice president decides to delete some important email, and that's an in-house Exchange server, he calls the help desk, and we recover that email for him because that's our job. But you transition to Office 365 and you call Microsoft and you go, my senior executive vice president deleted some email, and they go, well, the system did exactly what it was supposed to do. It deleted the email. Now we've got services for backing up other services like spanning and Backupify. cover that case.
And I'm a big
yeah, but
fan of those,
it's
let me
just
tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just ask your comment, Justin. Were you saying the problems that they were just talking about are more people problems, or just backing up the cloud, period, is not a technology problem?
Well,
I think there is definitely a technology problem, right?
Everything is a people problem. Ultimately, it's
Because I think we've created a new problem, which is we've taken all of our really important data for some companies, and we've put it in someone else's data center,
Yep.
but we still want a backup of that, right? And there are technical challenges to getting that done in a correct way.
Well, we put it in somebody else's data center without understanding the risks we're taking.
I think
Because
This thing, we
even
put
if
it
you
over
have-
there because it's more agile and it's cheaper. And it's like there's a reason it's cheaper.
Yeah, but even if you have
Because you don't have all those services.
even if you have an SLA,
Yeah.
Right.
that SLA is the equivalent of Kodak sending you a new blank roll of film when they screwed up your honeymoon pictures when they were developing them.
Howard, what you said is that there's a technical challenge to doing this, but I think what we're really saying is there's a overall strategy challenge, because people don't realize that when they use Office 365, they got to back that stuff up.
Right. No,
And-
that's the thing, the biggest point.
Yeah, and that's
is-
something that's so not known out there.
No, because Microsoft says we back it up.
Sure.
But what
Yeah,
Microsoft means by back it up and what your senior vice president expects from back it up are disconnected.
Well,
It's just not down to the size of-
developers are taking those things, right? And they're taking that responsibility without understanding what that responsibility actually is. They're used to those things just happening. They
So
don't have to
developers
worry
aren't
about
paranoid
backups.
enough?
Exactly.
Yep.
Developers aren't storage guys, so they're not paranoid about the loss of data like we are, because that's our job. We're paranoid about data loss, right? That's
I
what
think
we
the
wanna do.
challenge is going to be the size of the data sets again. Like we touched on in object storage, say a company goes all into the cloud, when you've got petabytes and petabytes, you can't be moving that data around. I think you have to look to the resilience in the application like we talked about, and also put some trust in a cloud vendor and purchase the correct plan that puts your data in data centers.
And we
There's
have to
definitely
hope that backup technology continues to evolve, because if we think back 10 years ago, we did file by file full backups and file by file incremental backups. And then we went to incremental forever, and now we're doing change block tracking so that the forever incrementals are even smaller. And so you can't back up that 2 petabytes of data. Well, I don't have to back up that 2 petabytes of data more than once. I got to back up the changes.
Under the presumption that the original source backup was rock solid. Another thing that I want to
Yeah, but it doesn't change that much. Sorry, but one day or the other, you have to restore 2 petabytes of data.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
So
putting
your
together-
infrastructure have to back up and restore. It has to be able to do that.
Right.
That's, now you're talking, now that's an RTO question.
Here's the other. Gene
Yeah,
Ming-
okay,
Can
but
that
we
application-
live in 2016, so you can't wait a month to get your data back. If your company stopped for a month because you have to
It dep-
restore backups, it's a problem. I don't know how.
I just wanted to point out, Gina Mings just said, by the way, on Twitter, SaaS SLAs are to protect the business interest of the SaaS provider, not the business interest of their customers.
Good point.
Here, here.
Absolutely.
That's a really, really good
And
point.
another
The
thing
agreement is always written to protect the person writing the agreement.
Well, that's just, you look at their, we'll make you whole. No, we'll refund you a month of service.
That doesn't make you whole.
Right,
that
exactly.
That makes you whole in your bill to them.
Exactly.
That's
but
the blank
it.
roll of film.
So, Mark, you were talking about backing up not just data, but applications. And another consideration that needs to be covered is that applications are really not server-based, they're workload-based. They're clusters with unique configurations. There are disparate parts, front ends, databases on the back end, potentially middleware. And the restoration of an entire application set means restoring all data and all applications and all server configurations in many cases.
All the underlying components that
Exactly.
you need to provide said service.
Even potentially licensing information to make those work properly. And that's not.
I started out this discussion feeling bad. I now feel way worse.
So what's the summary there, Curtis? What's the?
I mean, it's something
Be afraid,
that
very
it's a
afraid.
conversation we need to be having, about just because the problem is, I mean, you guys all knew, so I don't know how many times you've had, but in my career, I've had to argue with people that RAID wasn't backup. Now they're going to be like, well, it's in Amazon. They put it to 3 different locations. What do I need to back it up for? Right? It's even
And when you're-
that conversation is going to be even harder.
Sure, when the
Right.
telecom line goes down and one of the replication domain goes down, and it's supposed to be where your backups are actually, or replications are potentially being stored, then there gets corruption in there.
And we have made it fundamentally harder by moving it to someone else's data center on the other side of the world. And then you've got the RTO problem.
Yeah, someone else-
Even if we could solve the backup problem, the restore problem is going to be interesting.
Someone else whose objectives may be at odds with your objectives, and
Right.
whose risks are different, or whose understanding of the risks are different than yours.